Let us continue with our hearing. Yes, KF. Thank you, Chairman. I think we're about to finish with 2A and then we'll jump to 2B. I just have a few more questions. First, with regard to 2.23, the voluntary report, why can't you mandate this? Why can't you make it mandatory? Who is to answer the question? The Deputy Secretary. Is it a policy issue? Can the question be repeated, Chairman? Now, under 2.23, sorry, not 2.23. I'm referring to the importers making reports. You say 80% of them made reports. Why you don't make it mandatory? In fact, they have to report or declare. You can explain that, Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I invite the colleague from the Customs to explain. Thank you, Chairman. According to the Import-Export Ordinance, only goods imported by roads require the E-man to be submitted to the customs for selection and risk control. There is no law in terms of import by air or by sea to provide the E-man. If they are willing to provide information earlier to us so that we can control the risk, that will facilitate the customs clearance. So at present, importers can provide the E-man to the customs. With regard to import by sea, 85% of the imports have made the E-man declaration because that will help them to save costs. As for the remaining 15% of them, they do not provide the electronic information or electronic manifest. If they want to provide information, they can do it on paper. Now, when we write our report, we can make a recommendation for the panel. Next question on page 40 of the report, that is photograph 17 or page 47, sample of scallops with shells removed. Now, have you mashed or blended the scallops? They have yet to be blended. With regard to photo 17, the shells have been removed. Okay, thank you. Now, concerning the testing for the BQ, the department and also in particular the director said that the Codex standard was 1,000 BQ per kg, but you set a very strict level, which is 15 BQ. Even if it is so strict, the products imported from Japan are able to meet the standard. That, of course, is good news for the people of Hong Kong. The food we consume has been tested, and every time the food complies with the test. As for the exporting countries, they say that they also did the testing before exporting. The Codex asks for 1,000 BQ. Why FEHD sets the standard to such a very low and strict level? The Secretary. The FEHD decides on the limits on the radiation level, also complies with the standard of 1,000 BQ per kg. That's an international standard. What we are referring to the 15 BQ is a kind of warning line or warning sign. Say when the CFS conducts the CMS test, when the level reaches 15 BQ, it sounds the bell. And then the sample will be given to the government chemist for further analysis so as to pin down on the accurate finding. This is a risk-oriented approach. In other words, you say the codex is not strict enough. That's not true. The codex sets an internationally recognized standard, and the codex itself is well recognized by the international community. We do not say that the standard is not strict enough. Now, we are the gatekeeper. Well, let me put it this way. This is an alert system. We set the line at 15 BQ. Once it breaches 15 BQ, then the government chemist will conduct a further testing to look at the situation. As long as it doesn't exceed 1,000 BQ, the food is fit for consumption. So there is no change in the standard. That is a testing arrangement, and if it is higher than this limit, then they will follow that up to conduct further tests.
So it's for internal use in the form of an alert system. In other words, we have a system for safety and warning, and we set the threshold at a very low level so as to safeguard public health. Well, if the finding is such that it exceeds 1,000 BQ, which is the codex standard, then the food must be recalled. Now, for the codex, it is 1,000 BQ. For the CFS, it has been lowered to 150. And then you will check whether it does contain more than 1,000. 1,000 would be unacceptable. What about 900? Well, in this case, we would inform the importer immediately. Now, the importers understand that up to now, the people of Hong Kong are still concerned about radiation levels in Japanese food. In most cases, they would voluntarily recall the food. Well, Codex says the standard at 1,000. We pitch it at 150, and then in the case of exceedance, we'll test again. If it is below 1,000, it will be fine. I want to know why you have 150 and not 1. Well, it is perhaps lucky that the exporting country has done the testing properly. Otherwise, it will be difficult for the importers because you set it at 150, but in fact, international standards make it 1,000. So my point is, you shouldn't be overly strict. You don't need to be unnecessarily strict. So it isn't just a matter of safety. It is a matter of food trade and importation as well. I think you have a valid point where we look at it from the angle of value for money. So for you to lower it from 1,000 to 150, do you think that it is really necessary to lower it to that level so that we can save some money? So perhaps we should review the detection level, whether it should be or it must be 150. So perhaps we'll invite the department to look at that. And then paragraph 2.13, and that's about the discretionary power, right? For foods imported by air, when the consignments arrive, they're supposed to be accompanied with original health certificates. We have been told that the health inspectors may exercise discretion and release the consignments. Why have you allowed that to happen? Director, please. Chairman. For the control of foods imported by air, let me explain to you our practice. For consignments by air, well, I think the time between the food items have been exported to the time they arrive, the time duration short. And then for the health certificates, usually the health certificates would only be available just before uploading the cargo onto the airplane. Now, for the importers, when they apply for an import license, if we ask for the health certificates in its original copy, it will create difficulties for them. And therefore, for air cargo, we believe that this is not going to affect the overall control of food safety. We believe that we can issue the import license on the condition that with the arrival of the consignment at our FIO, they should provide the original health certificate to us or other export documents. Well, usually we've been told that the health certificate would only arrive together with the consignment. So the logic follows that when the consignment comes, then the health certificate should be available. So at the airport, when we inspect the consignments, usually we can have sight of the original health certificate. If everything is fine, then we'll release the consignment. In isolated cases, perhaps the importers and the exporters have problems in communication, or owing to one reason or other, the original document doesn't come with the consignment. In the past, what we have been doing was that we allow the senior health certificate who was stationed at the airport to exercise discretion. Say, for example, we looked at the track record of the importers. Say, for example, whether the importer had a good track record. And if that's the case, then the consignment would be released on the condition that the original should be produced later on, and we'll also follow this up. Now, for the audit came to check on us, and it was found that we didn't have any internal guideline for the exercise of the discretionary power. And sometimes there wasn't any physical examination, because they were saying that even if there wasn't an original health certificate, there should be a physical examination. In light of that, in November last year, we said that for the senior health inspector to exercise discretion, in the absence of the original health certificates or other documentation, release could only be done when certain conditions were met. Say, for example, whether the importer had a poor track record, or the consignments were subject to other tests and the results were not yet known, or our colleagues should carry out a physical examination on the spot. So we are trying to sort of provide for a mechanism for the exercising of the discretionary power. What happened was that in October, we issued the guideline. The reality was as follows. In November, for colleagues who exercised discretion according to the guidebook, there were just 8 of them. Since there were so few of them, we'd rather be safe. Of course, we have good communication with the industry. We tell the trade that we want to have sight of the original papers, and then we've introduced a new arrangement in January. In other words, we can dispense with the discretionary power, release the consignment in the presence of original papers. If not, the consignment won't be released. So we believe that by doing so, we can have a better risk control. Well, we are here to examine what they have been doing. I don't think we should forget the point that a lot of the foods are perishable. If we don't allow any discretion at all, then there would be an impact. I hope you won't blame it on us. Don't give people the impression that you don't want to exercise discretion because you don't want to take up the responsibility. We are not asking you to give up the discretionary power. We want you to strike a balance. You have to make sure that the food in Hong Kong is safe. Now you have to enforce the law, and it's a matter of you should allow the public to have confidence in buying the food instead of introducing another barrier for the food importers because they don't have a favorable business environment. Well, you may want to avoid trouble, and you'd rather give up the discretionary power. So I don't want to give the impression that it's advisable for you to give up the discretionary power. I don't think that's what we mean. Thank you, Chair. You know exactly what I'm driving at. We need to safeguard public health, but at the same time, you have to bear in mind trade facilitation. I think at the first day of our hearing, that's what you said. In October, you became aware of the findings of the audit, and you insisted on physical examination. You would also check the past record of the importer so as to form an opinion as to whether there would be discretion. And you would also follow up in case the originals were not submitted. Now, I think the chairman was right to say that you want to avoid the problem, and so you would just give up the discretion. We are talking about seafood being imported by air. Say, for example, for the lobsters, if you don't sort of release them in 2 or 3 hours, the lobsters will all die. So please don't try to dodge your responsibility. Mr. Ho also said that the American president caused the shutdown of the government, and a lot of civil servants were not able to receive their paychecks. So department, please be careful. If you make a change all out of a sudden, make sure that you have told the importers, because they might have thousands of kilograms of lobsters arriving in the airport. And if they haven't got sufficient time to give you the original health certificate, then all the lobsters will die, and it will be a problem. Let's move on to part 2B. Would Mr. Ho like to take up the questions first? In that case, I would like to defer to Mr. Ho. Yes, I've got many questions. Sorry, Paul. Discretionary power and also tightening up the control. I think the quantity involved is huge. Before the audit, probably since Hong Kong used to have a good food safety record, we inclined towards a simplified or we inclined towards a simple mechanism just to facilitate trade. Let me ask you this question. Had anybody been investigated by the ICAC or prosecuted by the ICAC? I mean, officers in your department. As far as I can recall, no, but I will certainly go back to verify that. Sorry, Mr. Ho, please go ahead. Thank you, Chair. Part 2B, control foods imported by road. I think there are quite a large number of problems here. Paragraph 2.32 in particular, subparagraph B. Chilled pork, chilled poultry, chilled meat, and then eggs and milk, etc. It is said that the drivers of such vehicles must automatically drive the vehicles to the Mankamto Food Control Office for inspection of the consignments by the CFS. However, from this chapter, you can see that the audit found that at least 9 vehicles evaded the inspection. 2 of them didn't drive to the drive through the Mancam toll. So please tell us what is our response. Well, I would like to defer to Dr. Wong so that you get an idea about how we carry out our work. Yes, Dr. Wong. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ho, for your question. We do take the report of the audit seriously. Thank you for taking it seriously. That's the case on our part as well. For chilled pork, chilled poultry, etc. Well, under CAP 1328K, the consignments must carry the health certificate or import permission when they come to Hong Kong. Yes, import permission. We do have certain conditions, one being that the vehicles must go to Mancam Toll for inspection, so they have to do that. And then for the road CFOs, we will check the papers, and if necessary, we'll also take samples, or we inspect them on a random basis. Have you finished? And what is your question? Mr. Ho, please state your question again concerning the 9 vehicles. 2.32. Yes, we know that you asked for the vehicles to go to the FCO. It should be driven there automatically. In the audit, it is said that for the 50 vehicles, at least 9 of them haven't gone to the Mancam Toll office. 2 of them didn't go there as well. Now for the FHD as well as the CFS, well, of course, the system has been there for a number of years. Were you aware of that, and what action have you taken? Now that the audit has this observation, what have you done, and what is your explanation? Now, it has been written down in the law that the vehicle should be driven there automatically. How come that some evaded the responsibility? So please explain the procedures before answering Mr. Ho's question so that it will be easier for us to understand. Now, for the existing procedures for the chilled meat and chilled poultry, when we issue the permission, when we issue the import permission, there are certain conditions. First of all, the first being that they have to go to Mancam Toll for inspection, and that's being done. And then for paragraph 2.39, please finish with your procedures. They go to Mancam Toll, what will be done before you jump to 2.39. You don't need to rush. Now, let me say this. For vegetables, the customs will do it. And then for chilled foods, it's not for the customs to do so. So we leave it to the drivers to go there by themselves. Yes, please tell us what is being done so that we can identify the problem. So you don't need to rush. There is ample time. Well, let me give you the details. Now, for all the chilled pork and chilled poultry, there are 2 arrangements. First, under 1328K, when they come, there are conditions. Under CAP 1328K for Regulation 4, there is this provision. No one can import meat or poultry without a health certificate. That's the first condition. In the absence of a health certificate, the foods can be imported. That is, if they can get the import permission from us, and the import permission is issued by the CFS. In other words, for foods to be imported into Hong Kong, either a health certificate or import permission. For import permission for chilled pork, we understand the practice of the importers. Maybe they don't have the health certificate. Therefore, when we issue the import permission, we say that at the time of arrival, they must go to Mankamto and they must produce the health certificate. They have to go to Mankamto for our inspection. Now, tell us what happened when they come to Mankamto. So the vehicle should go there and they should be inspected. Now the question is, some of them didn't go there. So tell us how the vehicles go through the control point and what steps are involved. So they go to Mankamto. Everybody goes through Mankamto. So please tell us the details. First of all, they will have customs clearance. And then they can take one of the two options. They can come to our Mankamto FCO. The other is the exit. Well, in normal circumstances, in the case of chilled poultry, after going through customs, they have to come to our Mankamto FCO for our inspection. And for those that come to us, we will first of all check the papers, and if necessary, we'll also take samples. In response to the observation of the audit in paragraph 2.39, they found that 9 vehicles had evaded the inspection at the Mankamto FCO. In other words, they didn't go through our office. 2 of them had never been driven into the FCO. Let me elaborate on the 11 cases, may I? Yes, indeed, that's what we are after. Yes, first of all, let me talk about the 9 cases. We got the report from the Director of Audit. We took it seriously and we checked all our records. It was found that for the 9 vehicles involved, 7 of them did enter our FCO. But at that time, our officers made a mistake at the time of inputting the data. The registration numbers were wrongly input. So we verified the records, and 7 of them did come to the FCO. And the exercise was done in such a way that the registration numbers were checked.
So the CFS does have its own information system, and for every vehicle entering the FCO, well, we would have records. So out of the 9, actually 7 did come to our FCO for checking, and for the remaining 2, we also checked it. And for the 2 vehicles that had never been driven into the FCO, we also conducted follow-up investigation, and they claim that in fact those vehicles were empty. They did not carry any goods at all, and we are now conducting follow-up investigation. So how can you tell if it's indeed empty? All right, they claim it's empty vehicles. Well, if everybody claims that it's an empty vehicle, then there is no need for them to be checked. So how can you tell whether or not they are telling the truth? All right, please answer the question after I've told you to do so. So you don't need to rush, Dr. Wong. We do have enough time for you to answer the questions. So we'll give you time to explain your situation, because I was concerned that I might not have enough time. Well, it's okay. You can come back again next time. You'll be given abundant time to answer the questions. You don't need to worry at all. All right, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ho. All right, we did conduct very detailed investigation, and we asked them about the details of what happened. In fact, on this occasion, all right, they entered the road cars records, and they also had to fill out the details, and we asked the driver, we also asked the importer. We conducted an investigation, and subsequently we also checked it with the C&E department as to what they filled in at the time of entry. And then when we conducted the investigation, we asked them to give us a caution statement. So it's very important. So they claimed that those were empty vehicles, but then for those vehicles, they were also put on the surveillance list, and we also mounted a joint operation with the C&E department. We did follow up on that. In other words, out of the 59 vehicles, so there were 9 plus 2. There were 9 plus 2 vehicles that had not been properly checked. So that was the audit check by the audit. But then there might have been other cases because for some food items they might not be safe if they manage to evade inspection. I understand that for the C&E department, they had a very good record. They had a very good system because when a vehicle passes through, they would display the car plate number, vehicle A, B, and C, and they have to be checked. So they would automatically go into their checkpoint for checking. So have you learned from the experience of the C&E department as to how these vehicles can be checked? Because if you look at the percentage of those evading checking, the percentage is very high because they've already entered Menkamto. So how are you going to control the import of food? That's the reason why we asked you to explain the situation. But then out of the 59 vehicles, 11 managed to evade inspection. That's a very serious problem. That's why Mr. Ho asked you those questions. Would you like to respond first? Because she's concerned about the lack of time. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, let me state this again. All right, in the report, it's 9+2. In fact, after our investigation, we found that it should have been 2+2 because 7 were not entered into the records because of a typo. So the car plate number was wrong. So when we checked the time and the records, in fact, those vehicles did come to the FCO for checking. All right, in this particular paragraph, I think there were problems. So it's 7 out of 59 with the wrong entry of car plate number. So I was wondering, so what device had you been using? So even if it's done manually, it would not have been that wrong. Because in the catering sector, if you enter the wrong data, so in the banks, what happened if you enter the wrong data? So how come they enter the wrong data? Is it that they did not have the necessary devices, that's why they enter the wrong data? So did they have to do it manually or what? So is it a problem with the equipment or what? So have you found out why they enter the wrong data? Yes, Dr. Wong. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ho. In fact, we also tried to find out why they entered the wrong data. There were two main reasons. First, when they entered the data, probably because the car plate number was read mistakenly, so they might have typed in the number in the reverse order. Well, you're allowed to be present, but then you don't have the right to speak yet. Okay, we have already reminded our colleagues that when you enter the data, you would have to pay attention to what you enter. And also in our investigation, indeed they enter the records, they check the time, they also check the consignments, and also there would also be a release letter after checking, and that would be given to the driver. So they would just jot down the car plate number manually. So we checked the car plate number and it's right, but then when entering the data, probably they got it wrong. So it's not just a minor mistake, Dr. Wong. Well, if it's a police officer issuing a ticket, if they got the number wrong, then the court would probably not be able to try that person. All right, our colleague just got a paper. Well, there are different pieces of legislation to regulate such imported food to make sure that it's safe. So all the legislation would have to be complied with, and for a particular department, you can't just enter the wrong data. It's not as simple as that because the implications could be very far-reaching. That's why we have to take it very seriously. We have to follow the legislation very stringently, or else you can't just say that, all right, we have tried our best, but then, sorry, there's a mistake. Well, you will have to make sure that improvements are made, as Mr. Ho said. Is it that you have not trained your staff properly? Or is it that it's not possible for them to enter the correct data? Because Mr. Ho has already made it very clearly, because he's concerned about the resources, you might not have been able to do your job properly. So you will have to make sure that the job is properly done. You can't just say that it's a mistake. All right, you've committed the mistake, we're criticizing you, but then you will have to know where the problem is, or else you won't be able to improve the situation. Thank you, Chairman, for speaking the words for me. In fact, if you make a mistake, then there might be drivers receiving a wrong letter, and if you want to prosecute them, you would not be able to convict them because you entered the wrong data. All right, if it's a typo, all right, it might happen once in a blue moon, then we might be able to forgive you. But then the ratio is that is 7 out of 59. What's the percentage? It's 8% or 9%. So it's a very high ratio. So it's in excess of 15%. So out of the 59 vehicles, over 15% would be wrong. So you can't just say that it's a typo, it's a manual mistake. In fact, you will have to find out why. You will also have to check all the other cases because the 59 vehicles have been checked by the audit incidentally on this occasion. But then you will also have to find out if there were other mistakes on previous occasions. All right, in the process, all right, they would have to go into the FCO automatically, but then many vehicles evaded that. So have you been able to find that out in the past? All right, this is the first, or is it the first time that it dawned on you that it happened? So what's your record? Do you know whether or not it happened in the past? Probably they never found out. So do you have the figures? So can you provide the figures to us? Well, we'll supply that after the meeting. Okay, the second question has not been answered. All right, they are supposed to go into that checkpoint automatically, but then Dr. Wong also talk about the procedures that have to be carried out after they have driven into the FCO. All right, what if they fail to enter? All right, for the 9 plus 2, all right, 7 did enter. But then 4 are still under investigation. If we had not told you that, 2 evaded inspection and 2 never went in, and then you went back to take a look. So my question is, given your routine work, how are you able to identify whether or not the vehicle has entered your FCO for checking? Dr. Wong? Well, have you been there? Well, I've been there many times. Well, first on the follow-up work. In fact, we have conducted some investigation on the evasion of vehicles. We attach a lot of importance to that, and we are now mounting a joint operation with the C&E department, and we have also taken the initiative to check the records, to verify the records, all right, for vehicles that have passed through road cars and also the C&E clearance, all right, we check the records against ours. And we are cross-checking that with the C&E department, and we have managed to identify some vehicles. We are following up on that, and we are also making some fine-tuning or improvements with the C&E department. First, on road cars, it contains many records because when they enter the data, they enter a lot of data, and then we will also have to single out the chilled poultry and also chilled meat, and the quantity is very large. And now what we are trying to do is that we'll try to help our colleagues to identify the consignments so that they find it easier to cross-check the records with C&E. And we are now also starting some new collaboration projects to cross-check the records so that we'd be able to identify the vehicles or the container vehicles more easily. But then that would take time. But then we ourselves have taken an extra step. That is, we are now checking the road cars records. So after they have sent us the records, we will also check it against the import record system. We have started that. And we have also been able to identify vehicles in which the drivers have evaded inspection, and we have identified 100 plus cases, and we have also identified 2 vehicles, and we are conducting further investigation. And that's rather complicated because we have to locate the driver. We also have to locate the importer. We also have to collect the information and evidence, and if there is sufficient evidence, we would take out prosecution where necessary. I think the procedures are too complicated because, setting Mankamto aside, for all the border checkpoints, there should have been a very stringent monitoring system, all right, for evasion of vehicles. You should have found it. It should have been very easy to catch them, or else you would be using a lot of resources on that. So you should have done it at source, so that when it happens on the spot, you should have been able to track them down. And are there any pieces of legislation under which you can prosecute them? For example, if a CCTV camera finds that they have evaded inspection, then you'd be able to find them. And if they do that once, twice, or even thrice, then you'd be able to suspend them. So that would be an expeditious action that you can take against them instead of just looking at the records and then locating them afterwards. So would it be appropriate, or are there other ways where you can deal with it more expeditiously? Because indeed, in the prosecution process, a lot of things could evade inspection, and that would not help resolve the problem of the food importation system. You would have to make sure that it's a foolproof system. So what's your view, Dr. Wong? Or is it that your earlier explanation has not been comprehensive enough? Would you like to supplement on that, Dr. Wong? Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ho. Let me elaborate a bit on the improvement measures that we have taken. In fact, we are using the roll call system of the C&E department. So that's the roll cast system that we use to check against the records. Well, the information that we got from the system would be somewhat lagging behind because on the spot we haven't got the information from roll cast, and we are actually collaborating with the C&E department because for the information that they are able to furnish us afterwards is not real time. All right, in the past it's 2 weeks afterwards, and now we've been able to get the information 1 week later. So it's not real time, it's 1 week later. Okay, you've made improvements, and will you be able to give us a paper as to when such improvement measures have been put in place, and when can they be completed? So do you have a timeline as to when they would be implemented, and so on? Yes, Mr. Ho, as Mr. Shiu will have to leave by 12. So can you allow him? Can you ask this question and then give the floor to him? Yes. Okay, Dr. Wong. According to what you said. All right. She's also Miss Wong. Well, she's also Dr. Wong. All right, Dr. Wong. What you said was that basically the information was inadequate. That's why they had not been able to enforce the law effectively. Then she should have put in more resources, for example, on the clearance mechanism. That should be done real time. All right, even if you rely on rollcast, you will not be able to resolve this problem. That's the problem that I'd like to bring up. Thank you. That's all. All right. The earlier question was whether or not they had enough resources for that, and if they have to rely on the C&E department's rollcast system, that's not good enough. All right, I think they've gone in the wrong direction. So even if more money is spent, they cannot just rely on rollcast. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, you may now leave. Thank you. Yes, sir. 2.37. Well, in that paragraph, you talk about the inspection of the consignments of vegetables, and you said that for the C&E department and the CFS, they have reached an agreement on what needs to be done. So I'd like to know when that agreement was reached. And also in reaching that agreement, looking at this paragraph, apparently the C&E department would identify vehicles. So they would select 15 vehicles to enter the FCO. So was it that 3 vehicles carrying consignments of vegetables would be referred to the CFS for inspection? So who would like to explain? Assistant Commissioner, Dr. Wong or Dr. Wong? All right, 2.37. Well, that is a joint operation with the C&E department, and under 2.37, 15 vehicles would be selected by the C&E department to us for inspection, and then for the remaining 3, we asked the C&E department to refer them to us. So we would give them the car plate number, and then the C&E department would direct them to come to us. So they would actually come with the C&E department vehicle. In fact, in the past, our practice was that for the 18 vehicles, so they would all be carrying consignments of vegetables. And now we have made some improvement to that, and the C&E department also agreed to take follow-up action on this. So we have already started to do this. So for the few vehicles carrying vegetables and fruits, we would also be checking other types of food, for example, poultry, meat, and also eggs. So when did it start? That's the question asked by Mr. Shiu. We'll have to go back and check as to when that practice started, but then that's the long-standing practice. Okay. Mr. Shiu? Well, under that surveillance mechanism, actually you're talking about vegetables from the mainland, you'll be checking them. So my question is that for vegetables from the mainland, well, there would be approved farms transporting vegetables to Hong Kong. All right, for the importers, when their consignments arrive at Hong Kong, different types of food and products, and also for the designated farms, all the details will be given to you. So in the past, have you received or found out any situation whereby the products, for example, in the consignments of vegetables, they were not from the designated farms, or that they did not have the necessary documentation to prove that they're from approved farms? Dr. Wong? Well, as far as I'm aware, for vegetables, well, under the current system, they'd have to go through the Shenzhen C&E department before they came to Hong Kong. So we don't have any records saying that they did not come from the approved farms. So what has that got to do with the Shenzhen customs? Can you explain a bit further on the role of the Shenzhen customs? Because you're relying on their export control. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Shiu. For vegetables from the mainland, when they have to export, they have to come through the Shenzhen customs before they can enter Hong Kong. In other words, they will have to go through Shenzhen customs after all the documentation has been checked. So is it that you just allow them to come in after they have gone through Shenzhen customs? Precisely, would also check the documents. So Shenzhen customs would check the documents. And then what about you? How can you be sure that it's from the approved farms, or do you just rely on the Shenzhen customs, thinking that it's okay so long as it's been checked by the Shenzhen customs? All right, they also have documents from the farms themselves. We would also be checking them ourselves. All right, on the spot. You'll be checking the vegetables. For example, there might be different types. All right, vegetable A, B, C, and D. And then would you open the cartons and check it again? So you're talking about the entire container is so large. So have you actually checked the entire container or what? So would you be checking the entire container or what?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Seal. With regard to vegetables, they're similar to other regulated foods. Now they have a list of designated farms exporting vegetables to Hong Kong. We also follow our food sampling program, our food monitoring program, to take samples. So you take samples only. And you have not picked any sample which does not tally with the list. Have you? I have to check. According to my memory, there was none. Well, I'm a bit astonished that the products are so safe, 100% safe. No vegetable has not come from any non-designated farm. Well, we should have the confidence, shouldn't we? Has there been such a situation as described by Mrs. Hill? Now, we did have samples which didn't comply, but Mr. Steele refers to the vegetable farms. We have picked samples which fail to comply with the standard, but the samples do come from or did come from registered farms. Say, for example, the farm is A according to the document, but the vegetables in fact came from farm C. Has there been such a situation? We have found that in the market, or in the markets, the shops are selling, say, vegetables at very low prices. Say, for example, but you pay the same price for 2 or 3 catties or vegetables in shops at the roadside, while you pay the same just for 1 catty of vegetables in the government owned markets. If they come from designated farms, then we will be very happy. But I have some doubts about it. Now you've checked 100% and they're okay, then there is no problem. Then I have no problem with that then. You can put the same question to her and she can assure you that it is 100%. 100%, what do you mean? Do they come from 100% came from designated farms, and you have not identified any vegetables which didn't come from designated farms? Do you? Did you? We refer to the those carried by trucks. But there were also vegetables carried by people. Now, if there is suspicion that people are carrying vegetables with a quantity more than their personal consumption, then that would be problematic. And the customs do conduct checks on people passing the border, and they did conduct prosecutions. Individuals carry vegetables back into Hong Kong. The individual claims that the vegetables are for his or her own consumption, but these people did provide the vegetables to the CFS for disposal voluntarily. Now, for those bringing vegetables on their own, they bought a caddy of vegetable. They didn't have a certificate, of course. I refer to the trucks, the big trucks. Are you sure that those vegetables come from designated farms? If you say that's 100% from the designated farms, then we clap our hands and give you a big applause. Now, can you confirm that in writing? Go back and check. You don't need to answer the question off the cuff. You say 100%. Now, in the future, if there is any problem, then you have to take the responsibility. If you can confirm that, then that will be good. Well, I don't have the information in hand, but according to my impression or memory, for those trucks come through Mankamto, the vegetables do come from designated farms. I can give you supplementary information in writing after the meeting. Now, that's on food safety. You can give us an answer in writing, or the answer in writing. Yes, if I may refer to para 2.38, since 2014, the CFS and Hong Kong Police have conducted joint operations to direct the drivers of vehicles carrying consignments, vegetables, and evaded CFS inspection to drive the vehicles into the Mankamto FCO for inspection by the CFS. The joint operation lasts for 1 hour and is currently carried out at night with a frequency of 2 times per month. Can you be more specific on this? Dr. Wong. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Siu. That's in relation to the trucks carrying vegetables. The design of Mankamto FCO allows vehicles to pass through the customs first and then come to the CFS. But there is also is a kind of a fork. The vehicle can go to the CFS. The vehicle can also leave through another road. Therefore, we need to have a joint operation with the police. It's easy to identify the trucks carrying vegetables. We can see the truck that it is carrying vegetables. So we can ask the police to direct the truck to the CFS at Mankamto FCO. But what about the trucks with sealed compartments. They can carry vegetables, don't they? Well, for vehicles carrying vegetables, they are easy to be identified. You can see them with your bare eyes. So with the police, we can ask the police to direct the vegetable carrying trucks to the CFS. According to the administrative arrangement, the vegetable carrying trucks go through Mankamto. My question is, the trucks with sealed compartments, can they carry vegetables? Now, for the vehicles with enclosed compartments, we do have joint operations with the authorities, the customs, I mean. There was the 15+3 operation, checking on the vehicles with enclosed compartments and without enclosed compartments. Now you referred to the joint operation with the police twice per month, just 1 hour per operation. So by naked eyes, you see that the compartment is not enclosed, and therefore it's assumed that it's carrying vegetables. If it is an enclosed a truck with enclosed compartment, then it is not carrying vehicles. But if they put the vegetables in the enclosed compartment, then you evade. They can evade the check. You're not. So you say he's correct. Now concerning the vegetables and fruits, we have been working very hard on that. If you look at the audit report, note 25, page 56 of the English version. Now the report does not include fruits and vegetables. So if you ask questions on fruits and vegetables, I have to go back and dig up the records. Now you have done a lot. So can you give us a simple reply on what you have done and when you have done and on what you have done and what you did, so that you can make known to all the hard work you have done? Yes, we can provide the report. Mrs. Hill, you have 10 minutes left. That's not what I've asked. So she is qualified to be a counselor because she leads us down the garden path. Now, let me refer to the joint operation with the police. That's a good thing, of course. But I don't know what you said is entirely correct. You may supplement your answer. Now, say by observation, with naked eyes, you notice that the truck is carrying vegetables and you direct them to be checked. And trucks with enclosed compartments may also carry vegetables, so they shouldn't just pick the trucks with open compartments. And if you don't check vehicles with enclosed compartments, then people will thought you're checking by putting vegetables in enclosed compartments. Now there is a need to tell you your whole working procedure so that we know whether you are doing it right or not. But you don't want to disclose the details of your procedure to avoid people evading your check. So there is a dilemma here, and you need to solve that. Now, as for 2.38, you say the police conducts joint operation with CFS once or twice every month, and only 1 hour per operation. It's in the evening. So you tell people that if you want to dodge any check, you better do it during daytime. Why? Tell us why you do the joint operation only at night. And also, you identified in 2.37b, you identified 3 vehicles. So if I count that 3 vehicles have been identified, then I am the 4th, and I can dodge or evade your inspection. Well, they said that they did it at night, but it didn't. It doesn't mean that they will not do it during daytime tomorrow. The secretary. Well, before the CNE explains, let me explain to you the overall situation. 2.38 and 2.37 imply that at least 640 trucks will be checked. Now CNE, 15 vehicles. 2.7b, 3 vehicles. So on a daily basis, 18. 1 month is 540. And 2.38, the CFS and the police, 2 times a month and 1 hour per operation, and 50, that means 50 vehicles per hour. So at least 640 vegetables. 640 trucks carrying vegetables to be checked. 600 vehicles out of how many? You need to tell us the proportion. I'll ask the customs to explain. Now 600 vehicles checked. But how many vehicles passing through? We can per month. We can provide the information afterwards. I'll ask the CNE to explain. In picking the trucks, they don't just pick the trucks with open compartments. 2.38 refer to the joint operation with the police, not the CNE. 2.37a refers to the CNE. My question to Dr. Wong was the joint operation with the police. Why suddenly he referred to the CNE department? Just now, Dr. Wong said that there was a joint operation with the police, and that's done 2 times a month and 1 hour per operation. Do you mean that the CNE department also adopts the same tactic? Well, I just said that whether it's joint operation with the CNE department and with the police, the total number of vehicles checked. Well, the CNE department can explain. Yes, the commissioner. Now, at the border, our main task is to combat smuggling. Say at Mankamto checkpoint, we choose the truck through the roadcast. Depending on the trend and depending on intelligence, we check the trucks, and all trucks have a chance to be checked. And we do pick trucks carrying food. We found trucks carrying food being used to do smuggling. So in Mankamto, we choose trucks not carrying food. We also choose trucks carrying food. As for vegetable carrying trucks, whether we only pick trucks with open compartments, we choose it through the system. We don't do it by bare eye observation. So we do pick trucks with enclosed compartments and trucks with open compartments. In other words, Mr. Chairman, the things done by the CNE department is different from the joint operation between the CFS and the police, because according to Dr. Wong, the police only pick trucks with open compartments, whereas the CNE follow the roadcasts. I hope that they can take a lead from the practice of the CNE department. That's all for me for the time being. Mr. Chair, let me follow up the questions asked by Mrs. Hill, and I want to clarify some answers. According to Dr. Wong, the CNE department adopt the roadcar system, and information provided by the roadcars to the CFS has a time lag, and therefore they have difficulties. If you may refer to para 2.31, and there is a note to this. It said that there are two approaches. One is to submit information 14 days in advance, and the other is to submit the information at least 30 minutes in advance. So there are only two ways. Is information incorrect, or is there a third way? They don't follow 14 days or 13 minutes, and the information is later than all that. Now I refer to the reception of roadcars information. In the past, we received information from roadcars in respect of food 14 days later. We receive every month 160,000 pieces of information, and we have to screen the information out of the 16,000 pieces, and they are related to poultry, meat, and egg. That's a lot of information. With regard to Note 24, is its information correct? And then the CNE should clarify this. The information should arrive at least 30 minutes before the cargo consignment is imported into Hong Kong, instead of having the information 14 days afterwards. With regard to Note 24, let me explain this.
For Note 24, I've noticed that the shipper or the freight forwarder will supply the information to the customs, in other words, before arrival of the consignment, and at least 30 minutes, and it works through roadcasts. So it's a matter of submission of information to the customs. As to the collaboration between customs and ourselves, it's a matter of getting the information afterwards. In the past, we used to get it once every 2 weeks. Now it has become more frequent. So there's no contradiction. The law says that the shipper must provide the information to the customs before arrival of the consignment. The customs, upon receiving the information, will refer food-related information to us. Chairman, in other words, does it mean that the customs has been late in submitting the information to the FHD, and therefore this has caused a problem with the inspection? The customs got the information in advance, but the department says that it only receives the information afterwards. So is there any contradiction? Well, the customs collects the information via the system. In a moment, the assistant commissioner may explain further. Understand the information is about cargo manifest, but for food safety, the information we need may not be the same for the purpose of the customs. But of course, we want to tell whether it is food. If it is not food, then it doesn't have to go through the CFS. Now, as far as dissemination of information is concerned, we're not able to get the information real time, and probably this is being sort of a matter of constraint because we haven't been empowered by the law to get the information. But I'm sure the Assistant Commissioner can elaborate. So what about the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance? Is it a matter of violation of that provision? Paul, let's hear from the customs. If you think that it's not right for you to disclose, you don't have to answer the question. Mr. Chairman, concerning foods imported by road, we have this piece of legislation. We have cap 60L. In accordance with that, we have set up the road cars. And according to the provisions of that particular legislation, all the registered shippers or the freight forwarder must electronically do the following. At least 30 minutes before the cargo consignment comes into Hong Kong or leaving Hong Kong, and at most 14 days in advance, provide cargo information to the customs for our purpose of risk control and also customs clearance so that we can carry out a selection. After Roadcast has collected the information, then in accordance with our agreement with the CFS, twice a month, the broadcast information, including the consignments, the vehicle registration number, and also the BCP that the vehicles go through, will be submitted to the CFS. Now, if you think that it is too infrequent to do it once every 2 months, twice a month, if you would like to step up the frequency, as the director has said, maybe we can consider enhancing the frequency to twice a month or once a week. We can talk to the FGD to enhance the frequency. Just now, mention was also made about the information collected under Roadcast. It was wondered whether we can refer the information to the CFS. Well, I believe that the purpose of referring the information to the department, I think probably we can be exempted because it involves huge public interest. The CFS may, as a result of getting the information, prevent a crime from happening, so we can get exemption under Section 58. So we get the information via Roadcast, and for us to forward the information to CFS, I believe that we are still meeting the requirements of the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance. Thank you for your very detailed explanation. Yes, thank you. Well, please tell us where do you draw the line, whether it should be 14 days in advance or 30 minutes before arrival? Is it up to the importer to choose? Who will answer this question? Customs. We do have flexibility here as long as it is done before the arrival of the vehicle or the consignment. You have between 14 days and 30 minutes to do so. It's up to the shipper or the freight forwarder to decide. Well, maybe it is not sort of related to the scope of our examination, but can you not tell us about the ratio? That is, please give us an idea about the profile. Does it mean that the majority of the information or the majority of the cases submit information to you closer to the time, nearer to the time? I have to check, but I believe that in most cases, the information will only be entered into the system nearer the time. I think you can understand that there will be a lot of changes as far as the logistics industry is concerned. A change in the driver, change in the vehicle, or even the change of the choice of the BCP. So we'd rather play safe. So just a short time before the arrival, then they will declare. Yes. Just now, for 2.37b, we have already got information from the DS. There is this delay in relation to the information from broadcast. Therefore, broadcast cannot provide timely information to the CFS. You can only try to identify the vehicles afterwards and carry out follow-up work. That is for those that have irregularities. Is that the case, Director? Yes. Well, just now, Mr. Shield has already asked a similar question, but then he was criticizing the small number of joint operations between the police and the CFS. It's really a small-scale joint operation, just twice a month. But then the CFS will, the customs will look at 15 of them, and then the CFS will identify 3 vehicles. Is that the daily sort of arrangement? Yes. Let me also comment on the point raised by Mr. Chiu. That is why we only carry out a joint operation with the police at night only. Yes, please. For 2.38, that's about vegetable vehicles. For they to come to Mankamto, usually such vehicles would arrive at night, and that's why we pick night time as the time for joint operation. But then, as mentioned in 2.32, it says that the cooperation should not be confined to vegetable vehicles. Of course, we believe that you will accept the recommendation, but please elaborate on what you are going to do. Dr. Wong, for 2.43, paragraph 2.43, the audit suggests that we should enhance our cooperation or collaboration with the customs and the police. We have already done so with the customs. Just now we talked about 15 plus 3 vehicles. They were confined to vegetables. Now we want to include poultry, meat as well. And we are also liaising with the police as well. All right, have you come to any conclusion as to ways to improve the system? Dr. Wong. As to our collaboration with the customs, as I have said, for the 15 plus 3 arrangement, we are going to include poultry, eggs, and meat. That has commenced. For broadcast, information from broadcast being related to us. Well, in the past, we used to get it bi-weekly. Now it will be weekly. They need to carry out some screening before they can forward the information to us. Broadcast covers a lot of information, not just about food. And then for the 160,000 messages available, they have to do some screening. They have to filter out the non-food items. And even for food items, they cover a lot of categories. So we want to focus on those that are of interest to us, like poultry, meat, and eggs. Dr. Wong, I think you have promised to give us the information concerning your collaborations with the customs and the police, correct? Yes. Mr. Shiu talked about fruits and vegetables. Yes, we'll cover that. As to the follow-up work with the customs, yes, we will cover that. When did you start that, and what about the frequency? Paul. 2.32. That's about the import of vegetables. And then with the high-risk foods like the chilled meat. And then thirdly, we have voluntary declarations. So please elaborate on the 3 of them. Or the third one. Is it because some importers would like to make use of the labeling effect so that they can get some promotion? That is 2.32 paragraph C. Who will take the question, Director? For the specific details, I think I have to defer to Dr. Wong because that's about the declaration done by certain importers. Dr. Wong. Well, for 2.32C, for vehicles going to Mankamto for inspection, well, under CAP 132AK, we have already issued import permission with one of the conditions saying that those carrying chilled foods, they have to come to us. For others, they are not carrying chilled goods, but then they still want to come to Mankamto FCO for our inspection. Exactly, you are simply repeating my question. I'm going after your answer. Why would they want to do so? What are the factors behind such a move? Well, our understanding is that if they have been checked by the CFS, because after being checked by us, we will stamp our chop on it, and then it's a mark of confidence. So they're trying to make use of your labeling for their own promotion, right? So that will increase our workload. Well, I haven't got the information. I can give you the information afterwards. Just now, we have already said that for vegetables, for the CFS, you have the 15+3 arrangement. And then with the police, you have joint operations twice a month. And then for high-risk foods, again, as Mr. Stephen Ho has said, some of the vehicles, that is 15% of the vehicles, have evaded. I think from the photograph you can see that instead of turning to the CFS, they go directly to the exit. Now, you have told us that you do have follow-up action in relation to those that have been evading your inspection. If it is still in process, can you report the progress to us? If you can answer the question, do so. If not, please give us supplementary information afterwards. Thank you, Chair. Just now I was referring to paragraph 2.40. In 2.40, you have identified vehicles which have evaded your inspection and you will take follow-up work. In June 2018, the CFS took the initiative to work on it. Well, in fact, that's before the publication of the audit report. We, on our own part, did some work. For 6 months, we've worked on it, and if you need the details, we can provide them afterwards. Yes, if I may turn to 2.42B, I think for paragraph A, you gave an explanation in response to Stephen Ho's question. For B, 4 vehicles carrying consignments of eggs evaded your inspection. What about the outcome of your follow-up work? Dr. Wong. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we did follow up the 4 of them. We are trying to prosecute one of them. And then for the remaining 3, we are seeking legal advice. If there is sufficient evidence, we'll also take them to court. Please also take a look of 2.45, and that's about the improvement measures. Have you seen any outcome? I think they have referred to that earlier on. They promised to give us a paper. Would you like to give us an answer briefly? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, for the improvement measures, we have already stepped up our collaboration with the customs. We have taken the initiative to use the information from broadcasts so as to check with our own information systems. We have found that 2 of the vehicles have been suspected to have evaded our inspection. We're still following this up. Are you going to provide supplementary information to us? Yes, indeed. I think we can move on and we can talk about the vehicles as well as the seal. Of course, they should be asked by colleagues who will be responsible for those parts. A moment ago, I asked about the ICAC's investigation. Now, I think the audit has examined your work, and I think they will come up with useful recommendations. Well, I think as a result of the loopholes identified, probably in the past there might have been a lot of problems. So my question is, have you ever sought professional advice from the ICAC in the light of the loopholes so that you can prevent irregularities, because you do have discretionary powers and that may give rise to loopholes? Who will answer the questions? Director or Dr. Ho? The CFS was set up in year 2006, and in other words, we have got a history of over 10 years. For the CFS, I think its main focus has always been dealing with food incidents. As to the system of the CFS, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of the Audit report provide a very good opportunity for us to take a very holistic view of the system of food safety, as well as the relevant workflows. I'm sure that after the hearings of the PAC, in the light of the audit report, we will certainly carry out a very in-depth review to find out the problems and to see what solutions should be developed. Now, for a department, other than the Director of Audit, the ICAC would also, from time to time, look at the procedures of a department, and they will give us anti-corruption advice. We do talk to the ICAC. The ICAC does carry out yearly assignments for us so as to provide advice to us. The Ombudsman, from time to time, takes a look of our work and may come up with some investigations initiated on their own and come back with certain feedback. Well, let me clarify. I don't mean to accuse any malpractices within the department. What I'm saying is that a lot of consignments are involved, and then as a result of the 2 chapters in this report, I think there is room for irregularities or favoritism. So other than what the director had said, and in fact, perhaps you should provide more information. That is what has been done together with the ICAC. And you talked about the assignments. If they have examined, they have been looking for possible loopholes in your system, please tell us. So that other than this audit, what about the Ombudsman? Has the Ombudsman done anything so that we can be more assured that there won't be any sort of weaknesses making you vulnerable to corruption?
So we'll provide you with further information after the meeting, but then for the specific details of operation, we might not be able to provide them. Well, the ICAC did give us advice on prevention of corruption practices, so we can provide the details to you later. Yes, I understand that the CFS has been established for slightly more than 10 years, and you've been working very hard to strengthen your system, and you've been encountering a lot of problems, for example, the radiation incidents, and also there's been a lot of import of food items, and no system is perfect, and you cannot meet all the requirements, but then we'd like to see how you're able to ensure food safety for the public. So please do furnish further details in your supplementary paper other than the audit report, as Paul just requested some further information. So please do give us further details so that when we compile a report, we will have further information to base on. Yes, Tanya? Okay, let's move on to paragraph 53. I'd like to thank Mr. Stephen Ho, because originally he should have been given the floor to ask questions. So he has given me the chance to ask questions first. Well, this is a suspected case of release of consignments without the license. So it's a suspected case of interpretation of the relevant provisions under the law, and as a result, in determining whether or not the consignment of meat is or should be allowed to enter, that's a case of that nature. So that's about case 3. So for those watching the webcast, they'll be able to understand. So it's about a consignment of 432 frozen beef patties, and they've been able to pass through Pt2. And for frozen meat, they'd have to get an import license issued by the FEHD under Cap 132AK, as that's under the import case. That's Cap 132AK. So that's that's about fresh or frozen carcasses and so on. That's under the imported game, meat, poultry, and eggs regulation. So that's about the edible part of those. But then the audit found that the importer did not apply for an import license for this consignment. And then for the Pt2 staff, they also allowed the consignment to pass through, and there's also no record of why the consignment was allowed through. And then on the 11th of June 2018, as the importer did not have the license, that's why the CFS decided to seek legal advice on whether or not legal action could be taken against the importer, and subsequently the DFJ also met with the inspector, and the FEHD was told that no legal action could be taken against the importer. But then the CFS subsequently issued a guideline to the frontline staff at Pt2, and that has to do with this particular case. And the advice was that for raw deseasoned poultry, meat, and so on, they would not be subjected to the import regulations regulation, and unless it's proven that the entire consignment has been seasoned or has been preserved, or else the consignment would be subjected to the regulation. And then the CFS also took further measures. But then the audit also noticed that under para 5A, the CFS also noted that for raw cooked meat and also poultry meat, they would not be subjected to that. But then the audit noted that the definition of that when compared to the meaning of fresh, for fresh meat, it means that it has not been frozen or has not been processed by way of the addition of preservatives and so on. But then for frozen, the meaning would be somewhat different. It could also include entirely cooked or fully cooked meat and so on. So therefore, raw seasoned meat, if it's not subjected to the regulation, that is not appropriate. And as a result of that, the DFJ also told the CFS that they should seek further advice on this. So that's the brief facts of the case. So I'd like to know, have you sought the legal advice with regard to the definition of frozen meat? So what would be covered and what would not be covered? Chairman, first of all, I'll defer to Dr. Wong to give you more details about that. So it's a suspected case of importer violating the regulation by importing certain meat products, and then she would then tell you that from the perspective of a CFS, in enforcing Cap 132AK, how do we define the different meat products? Dr. Wong, is it a sub judice case that is being tried in court or what? And can you give us the details? In fact, I would be more interested in whether or not they've obtained legal advice for this particular case. So if it's a pending case in court, then please let us know. And if you are able to divulge more details, please do so. Yes, thank you, Thank you, Ms. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Chen, for your questions. So allow me to spend a bit of time on the details of the case, all right? So if you look at the case, so that was in January 2018, and at the time, there was a consignment of 432 cartons of frozen beef patties that was imported into Hong Kong. And then the audit, made an inquiry with us in May, because they check the information system for imported food items back then, and they found out that this consignment did not come with an import license. And when they made the inquiry with us in May, it was a verbal inquiry. And then our colleague was aware of certain information, but then for the colleague responsible for the checking in January, he was already transferred out of the department at the time, and that's why we had to locate the colleague again to find out from him as to what actually happened. And according to him, at Pt2, we would be doing the physical inspection. So who was the one who was transferred? So the one who was dealing with the case on the ground. So the person who dealt with the case on the ground. So did you not have the filing system? Is it that once a person has left the department, then everything will be gone with him? No, as it has to be a comprehensive investigation to find out the details of the case. That's why we also had to check with the colleague on the ground, because he was the one responsible for checking the consignment on the ground. And then he said that when conducting the inspection of the consignment at the checkpoint, whether or not it's a processed food, and then through the driver, a call was made with the importer to confirm that that was indeed the case. And then we conducted a follow-up investigation, and they also had to come with the health certificate, and we checked with the mainland authorities, and we found out that for the beef patty, it's been processed with microwave. So when we check that, so it's not under CAP 132AK, because as I said, as Ms. Chen just said, it's either fresh or frozen carcass, flesh, and also as to whether or not we sought the advice of the DFJ. Indeed, we did that. So have you got the advice? Can that be made available to us for reference? Well, in fact, we have sought the advice from the DFJ, but then we also needed to further discuss with the DFJ on the interpretation of the law, because under CAP 132AK, for frozen food, there is no clear definition. All right, if you're able to provide that to us, then please do so, or else you have to let us know why you can't give it to us. So several things to do. Well, Chairman, I don't understand the internal mechanism of the administration. All right, they've given you the legal advice, and now you're discussing with them the legal advice and whether or not there should be changes in your internal operation. I do not quite understand it. So, all right, try to give us if it's possible. Okay, so you can also ask us not to disclose it. Yes, Dr. Wong, can you continue? Yes, Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong, you may now continue. Yes, for this particular case, in this particular case, this consignment does not require an import license. So, according to the information given to us by the colleague, it's not a case involving an import license. Then why would you bother to why did you bother to get the advice from the DFJ? So as the Secretary for Justice said, after she had given the advice, there's no need to seek external advice. Okay, Chairman, it's what you said. It has nothing to do with me. Okay, but then it's about the frontline staff enforcing the law, and it's better if they could get the advice so as to tell whether or not whether there is this requirement for an import license to be obtained. All right, para 2.47, I'd like to ask a few questions on that. This is about the seal. Okay, you can see photograph 25 and photograph 26. So we have the seal number shown on the original health certificate and it's been set out. And then that would also have to match the seal number shown on the security seal of the vehicle. So they would only be released after the two have been checked and found to match each other. So that's the safeguard. And then our audit checked 15 consignments of chilled pork, chilled poultry, and frozen poultry, and found that 2 consignments in para 2.48, so 2 consignments of frozen poultry had been imported without seal numbers on the original health certificates. So without that, the CFS should not have been able to match that with the number of the security seals on the vehicle, and there was also no record as to why this was the case. So from what we have seen, apparently there is no recorded reason why the consignment was still released, given the fact that they have not been able to meet your requirement, and yet there's no details recorded in the system as to why the consignment was released. So I'd like to first know, how come there was no such seal number and yet it was released? Was it because you made a call and so on? Or is it that after the investigation you cannot be sure? So are you sure? How can you be sure that they have done what they should have done? Dr. Wong? Thank you, Chairman. Allow me to explain a bit further. Yes, please. Yes. In fact, we have checked with the you mean the GACC? You're referring to the GACC? Yes. We checked with the GACC, and according to our understanding, well, for the original copy of the health certificate concerning poultry meat, well, in the original copy, there would be this seal number, and then the seal number would also have to match with the security seal shown on the vehicle. So why is it that in this case it's not the case? So the colleague did not talk to the GACC on the spot, so that's something that we have to improve in the future. But then according to our investigation, the GACC also gave us a reply, because for these 2 consignments, it's from Henan, it's from very far away. So at Shenzhen, they changed the vehicle because of various reasons. For example, the car plate would not be permitted in Hong Kong and so on. So the health certificate did not come with the original seal number. So we talked to the GACC on this case, and at present, in November and December, well, this only happened when the consignment was coming from very far away. If it's from Guangdong, that would not have been the case. They would all come with the original seal. But then, given the fact that for consignments from very far away, there is a chance that they might have to change vehicles in Shenzhen because of the car plate number and so on. But then in November and December, from what we have seen so far, if you look at the number of consignments, even if there were 2 consignments from outside the province, they would still have the seal number. Yes, Tanya, can you explain a bit further on the security seals that we saw on photograph 26? Where would it be found on the vehicle? Where would it be found on the vehicle? Is it at the door? Oh, there's a lock at the door, and then they would have this security seal, and then in the green part of the lock, you'll find the security seal. So the entire consignment will be locked. So there would not be different compartments storing different types of food. No. So it's like a container. So it's a truck. and then you would have this container. Okay. The audit also made some recommendations. And then 2.50. So it's about discrepancies in import documents. And as I just said, so out of the 28 food consignments examined, for three consignments, the names of the exporters shown on the original health certificate were different, and there was no explanation and no reason given. And then in 9 consignments, the total quantities declared in the food import declaration was different. And then you try to give an explanation in 2.51. So for the frontline staff, from what we have seen, you're just making the inquiries after the incident. But then for the frontline staff, is there any guideline for them? For example, if they come across anything that's different from the requirements laid down by the department, and if they have to release such consignments, to a certain extent, we don't even know if they are exercising their discretion because there is no explanation whatsoever. So is it that every time you will have to make the inquiry after the incident, you will have to check with the staff on the ground, or is it that they would be required to jot down the details or the explanation as to why they released the consignment or what? Dr. Wong. Well, in fact, we admit that in these cases, our colleague could have done better. Well, at the FCO, when the documents were checked, for example, if in the health certificate, if there is any discrepancy, so that's like what is stated in A, so they will have to check and make sure that everything is in order before the consignment would be released. So some improvements have been made. For example, we have organized briefings for our staff, telling them the requirements and also certain operational manual details that they will have to pay attention to, and we will also have to step up training and also supervision. For example, for the senior health inspectors, they would also go there to conduct supervisory visits, and they would also prepare a checklist for inspection so that colleagues would check with the checklist as to what items they would have to check, because colleagues are very busy, and what we're trying to do is to help them so that for the management, they'd be able to do their supervision easier. And there would also be meetings with our frontline colleagues and also different sections staff, so that they'd also be able to tell us their operational difficulties and where improvements can be made, and there would also be step-up communication with them.
趁呢個機會講一講啦。
Well, if I may take this opportunity to say further, just now the chairman said that in September we reported to the audit department the improvements to be made. Today we have further improvement measures. In September, we discussed the improvement measures, and we were given time to talk to our frontline staff on how to do the job well. When we replied to the audit commission, we had to tell them the things that we could do. And after September, after further communication, we came up with further measures. In fact, we are doing self-improvement from time to time. We don't need to wait for the audit. Yes, that is after you talk to the audit commission, you think further, and you have made further improvements. Yes, in the future, we'll continue to make improvements. In respect of releasing the consignment despite the discrepancies, 12 out of 28 were released despite the discrepancies. That's no small proportion. Can you tell us whether there were any abnormalities of these cases which required further investigation? Did they fall within the discretion? Or if there is none, then how do you resolve the discrepancies? Is there any breach of rules? Dr. Wong. As for 2.50b, 9 consignments declared in that's the total number of declaration, which is different from the declaration, which is different from the health certificate. With regard to the food import declaration form, it is a voluntary form, a voluntary report. We ask the driver, we get the telephone number of the driver. Now we can go after the importer, but we have no information of the driver. So in the form, we obtain the information of the driver. If need be, we can go after the driver to do follow-up work. If the quantity is less than the health certificate's quantity, say the health quantity is 1 ton or 500 or several hundred kilos. If the amount is less than that is in the health certificate, the problem is not big. But if the amount is more than the health certificate's quantity, then we will have to follow up. We explain that, and we also have briefing for our staff members. We will have refresher courses, and we will also step up supervision. Also concerning the written explanation. Now, if they've seen discrepancies, even if it is the declaration is voluntary, if they have discovered any discrepancy, then after release of consignment, the colleague would say enter something in the computer or put down something on record so that explanations can be traced further. Yes, we'll follow that up, and we hope that if there is any discrepancy and the goods are released, then that should be properly recorded for follow-up in the future. Has other departments, such as the efficiency unit, helped you? And say, how is your computer system and whether it is up to requirements? The director. With regard to workflow, it is not because of the audit report. The CFS has been set up for more than 10 years, and we have been considering upgrading the system of the CFS. We have 17 systems altogether. Import information system. We also have other systems. And over the years, because of different purposes and for different objectives, the systems were put in place, and there was no direct interfacing. So at the end of since the end of 2016, we have obtained the approval of the FC. We have a D2 grade officer who is responsible for looking at the information systems of the CFS and its structures and the structures. If we just rely on our staff members and reminding our staff members, then we need to improve on that. And if we want to improve on that, we need to have more management information. So in terms of the systems, we will want to make improvements. At the start, we know that it's a tall order. Therefore, we have asked for a supernumerary post for 7 years. That is rare within the civil service. But we hope that we want to rationalize or improve the system within the time frame. And if need be, we will consult the GCIO and other government departments. As for improving our guidelines, we rely on the directorate of the CFS and also the relevant heads. They should be most familiar with the workflow. If need be, within my department, there are colleagues who are responsible for management services to improve the workflow. Just now, Dr. Wong answered what improvements were made after the Audit Commission gave the report. Now, if you add work, add more improvements, that will increase the workload of the staff, and you need the experts to help to improve the system. You add workload to their day-to-day work, they may not be able to have enough time or efforts to do the job well. Now, when we study the Chapter 1, I think it is unfair to them. Your establishment, or rather your staff, your actual number of staff members fall short of the establishment. Now, I think your work is very important to hygiene and health, so that's something has to be done. Yes, in our review, we will review the workflow. We'll see whether we can simplify the procedures and whether we can strengthen certain aspects. And if we need to adjust our manpower, we'll apply for more adequate resources. You also have there is also the efficiency unit, right? Within the department, there is a management services. Well, the government has an efficiency unit. Yes, they have an efficiency unit. You can ask them to help you. The chairman. Is there any follow-up? Even if it is voluntary, the declaration is voluntary. I think to be fair to the Audit Commission, your guidelines require the importer to rectify the discrepancies as soon as possible. So even if there is any discrepancy, you have to deal with it, and have you follow the guidelines. And if there is any discrepancy, shouldn't it be marked down so that other colleagues can follow up? Now, Chairman, you say that you ask the colleagues to do more work. In fact, as said by the director, something can be simplified, but something has to be done with greater efforts and time. Now, we need to check the guidelines. You asked not to show us the guidelines. That's impossible. You now know why we asked for the guidelines. You can ask us not to put it in the report. We are willing to do so if we are given the reason for that. But at least you should give us the guidelines. I know that you've given us the guidelines. I just want to explain to you. We are helping you to solve the problems from value for money perspective. Mr. Ho, we'll end at 1. I know that I only have 10 minutes left, and it will be impossible for us to jump to the next topic. Since Ms. Chan has come to the question on seal number, I want to give the public a clearer picture. We have seen this 3+9 consignments which have problems. It seems unreasonable, but there are reasonable explanations. Say, for food supplied from places outside the province of Guangdong, they may need to have break up the container and then redistribute the food. And in fact, when they send food to Guangdong, the food may not necessarily be for Hong Kong only. So there is a discrepancy, and the quantity is less than that in the health certificate. That is understandable. Now we keep asking the CFS how to make better records. That may not be possible because it is not only done by your own department. I want to ask you how you communicate with the mainland departments. In particular, certain trucks come to Guangdong province. They may break up the container and redistribute the goods. How can you make sure that the food referred to in the health certificate is exactly the same? They may claim that the poultry came from farm A, but after they've broken up the consignment, how can you make sure that the food really, or the poultry really came from farm A instead of being switched? The director or the secretary? Chairman. It is about the communication with mainland on import control. I'll ask Dr. Wong to explain. Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Wong, you have a lot of things to do. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, please go on. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ho, for the question. At the border, if there is any communication in respect of the documents, we have a liaison mechanism. Just now, Mr. Ho referred to poultry or chilled chicken imports. The case we came across referred to the poultry came from outside Guangdong province, from a place outside Guangdong province, and there is a change in trucks. But the consignment came from registered farms, and there is no change in information. How do you know? Because each consignment has a health certificate. The health certificate specifies that it's chilled chicken or chilled meat coming from which farm or which processing site. So, assuming that it came from Hunan, when it came to Guangdong, because they changed the truck and change it to another truck with a cross-border license, who supervise the switching, or who supervise the change in the trucks? How can you make sure that it is the same batch of food? If they want to change the truck, then the mainland authorities will supervise that. So you don't know how they do it. Do they have designated place for the change of trucks? Do you know that? Or don't you know? Now, if they change the seal, they will put in the documents, won't they? Well, I worked at the container terminal. If I change the goods to another container, then the Chinese authorities will copy the number, and then the serial number have been checked. Now, when they change the truck in Guangdong, I don't know whether the change was done by the shipper or whether it's under the supervision of the health authorities or the customs. Do you know that? According to our understanding, in the mainland, it is done by the supervision of the relevant departments. It is not done by the exporter to change the trucks. Well, if that is the supervision by the authorities, that's good. Is there any document showing that the change is being supervised? Say, for example, the customs will put down a note, say the goods is changed from truck A to truck B, and there is no change in quantity. Concerning the seal and the document, if there's a change of trucks, will that be put down in the document? Say, what is the new seal number? Now, if there is a change in truck, is that recorded in the documents? And the change, to confirm that the change is supervised by the authorities. Can you answer that question? Now we have communication with the mainland to see if more detailed information can be put on the health certificate. Say, for example, there's a change of truck and it can be put on the health certificate. That's what Mr. Ho is asking. Yes, we are talking to them on this. The Audit Commission has pointed out that the seal number has gone or the seal number has changed. If you can put it down in the document that is a new seal replacing the old seal, then the problem won't have occurred. Is my understanding correct? Yes, correct. Now let me come back to the question on vegetables. Mr. Seal has asked questions on vegetables, and therefore I want to ask a question on 2.37. That may not be the problem of the FEHD. Mr. Seal referred to vegetables sold at 3 catties per $10. That doesn't occur once in a blue moon. That happens frequently, and they really can't make ends meet if they sell at such a low price. They don't sell it in FEHD markets. They sell it in shops, in rented shops, and you really can't make ends meet if you sell it $10 for 3 catties. So you need to find out. Now, you also say, now in 2.38, drivers are directed to drive into MKT FCO. This shouldn't just be done by your joint operation. It should be your regular work. All the vehicles should go through the MKT FCO. That's for vegetables and for chill poultry. 100% of such vehicles should go to Mankamto FCO. And for vegetables, you just pass the buck to the joint operations. I just want to see whether you want to make any supplementary answer to that. I'll stop here because it's already 1. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members of the head, for the question. Let me explain. The Audit Commission refers to the joint operations with the CNE and also with the police. As for our CFS, every night we direct drivers to go to the Mankamto FCO. 2.37 and 2.38 refers to joint operations of other departments.
Dr. Wong, well, had that been the case, that we won't have 18% of them, that is 59 vehicles, being found to be in that category. I think the figures show that the system doesn't work. I think you should have done it on a routine basis. I can understand if there are some gaps and then the system is fine. We leave it till the 3rd hearing. All right, the 25th. We'll have it on the 25th. I think we have already checked with your personal assistants. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Audit.